Something that cops don't know how to use. It's called binoculars. And I could tell you this because as a muralist, artist, and sign painter that has worked mostly at night in South Florida from 91, around 91 to pretty much 2019, police would just come up to me and like start yelling at me. And sometimes my ladder, I would be up against a wall with no windows, and I would be up there with a paintbrush in my hand painting like half of a letters or a sign or a picture, and then they would just roll up and start screaming their heads off at me. One was in I could tell you, like, one was in Pompano, one was in Fort Lauderdale. I can remember specifically. I could go through the list, and over those years, I could say I've probably had at least 75 police interactions where they just assumed themselves to come out of nowhere and harass me, or somebody called and says something suspicious is going on. When if they just had binoculars and looked and saved me 5 minutes, for them to look through the binoculars, then it would have saved me really a lot of aggravation, them integrity and face. But they just don't do that because they don't give a shit. Okay, so they got it in the head that everything's bad and somebody makes a complaint, we have to follow it, so let's just arrive on the scene and start interrogating people. But they need to start asking questions. What are people doing? I've actually had to yell at police, and I carry two phones, and I call the 911 immediately. And it's not misuse because you guys are violent, and you beat me up in the process, and, and I beat you in court because those charges were dropped because you used excessive force, and you were an idiot, the one cop was, in Wilt Manners. Dickbag. Okay? But you know what? They should fucking lay back and just, like, watch what's going on for a couple minutes instead of just rolling up and being suspicious and acting like an asshole. And it just really pisses me off because sometimes I would actually leave the job because I was so mad. And it's aggravating because they come out and they surround you. I've had the gun in my head a couple times, while I'm replacing letters, and yes, I am on rooftops and on walls and in the night, but you know what? So are cops, so are people working at gas stations and 7-Eleven, so are utility workers. And I used to call the police station after 5 o'clock, all through the night and say, listen, I'm working on this corner. If anybody's suspicious or somebody calls, you can come check me out if you want. And often they would. One guy on US 1 by Commercial there, his name was Tony, and he would come by. He brought me coffee, dude, and he shined his light. He's like, hey, you need some light? And he hung out because while he was at his area post there. And then we got to talking. So it's like, cops used to be cooler in some ways, but then after 5 they go to an answer machine now because all the cops and all the police departments are subcontracted, so they're basically security guards holding the same paper that you and I could hold, or somebody that has diplomatic immunity that could act like an asshole and get away with it. And that's what's really going on here. So you got to understand the whole depth of this situation and how deep it is. But the thing is like, so now if you call after 5 and say, okay, I'm working in this area or I'm painting murals, you get an answer machine. That means they're subcontracted. That means that they can be accountable. You just have to go through the process of suing them. And I believe that the reason for all that stuff is because they know they're corrupt, the court's corrupt, and if it really came down to it, it could be a backlog that could go for years and years and decades, and everybody could be, replenished and released, and all charges could be brought federally against cops and court workers. You need to start looking at state's attorneys. Fuck the state's attorneys, dude, and their bar members. They can communicate with with the courts right there because they're affiliated. But for you, they try to make it so you can't write your own paperwork. So this way you have problems communicating, and then they pull their games when you go to court, and they don't acknowledge your paperwork when technically and realistically, and by the Constitution, the guidelines they took an oath to, they have to, but they won't say that. Okay, because to acknowledge it means it's on record. So they actually play these little stupid, petty, childish games, and they come against us, using like, oh, I told you so, haha, knock knock joke grade frickin' tricks is the mentality of these people, and that's what they do. And you know what? Just because the cops don't use things like this to assess situations before they roll up, they conduct the commerce and they scare the crap out of you with guns and badges. So that's why, you could take a grown man with a family and a business that's raised kids, and some cop will come and he'll start bossing the guy around or the woman around, or the vet around, and now it's like a childish game where you have to listen to them, and it's bullshit, but yet you're stuck there in their fucking, grasp, because they got a badge and a gun, and if it's going to go on record, and more are going to come. And then the more you do, they might not kill you right there, but just the knowledge that you're going to spend years in court and go all through that BS. You know what, man? That's like reason for self-defense and tyranny right there. Like, because of tyranny right there. Because we know what is connected to it. So technically, anytime you get stopped by a cop, it's deadly force. And it should be looked at as such, because you don't know how it goes. Because they do fabricate. And you know what? You can't say I'm wrong. There's nothing you could do to say I'm wrong. And for all the people out there that think all cops are good and that you should just shut up and listen when they talk and everything will be all right and tell them the truth, you're a scumbag, because that's not the truth. Okay, the cops lie. Okay, cops don't hold their word. Okay, cops make up stuff. Cops have attitudes at times, and I think really the only way this is going to get right is if there's an anger management and a stress assessment, evaluation before and after every shift, with an interview and discussion on how the day went. This way people can keep track of the cops' activity, because obviously it's getting out of hand. Nobody wants to look at it, and complaints aren't filed, and they're sitting on desks, and we're getting screwed. So the only way to really deal with it is to know about it, and they have to be watched. And you know what? If you want me to say that not all cops are bad, I'll say that, because they're not all bad. They don't all intend to be bad, but their job description and saying, oh, it's my job, that makes them bad. So what are you going to do about it? They're an accomplice to bad. So that makes them bad, right? They sit around and they watch and they know about bad and they don't do anything about it. So therefore, you got to do something about it. And, like I said, I got videos on Periscope and stuff where the cops are coming up to me. Literally, I'm on the ladder with paint and, in lit areas with a signed contract and my credentials like a freaking Nazi area on my dashboard. And they come up and they start yelling at me. And, if they would have just sat back for 5 minutes, oh, dude, hey, the guy's painting over there. Oh, we can see his license plate. Oh, yeah, he might not be wearing shoes even. Oh, we see what he's painting right there. Instead, and then fucking drive away. Or just, nice man, we were just watching you, checking you out, make sure you're safe. And then drive the fuck away. Don't roll up on me and start beating me or interrogating me and say, what are you doing here? And that goes for you freaking stupid ass citizens and private people that think you're better than everybody else too. Okay? Because pressing a button and paying once every 4 years and paying the taxes, doesn't make you a good American. I'm sorry. You have to do a little more than that to be upstanding in my book. And if you're a veteran, I got respect for you. And if you treat veterans like shit, you're a jerk off. So we need to start having some good stuff here. Okay? And this is without prejudice. Okay? Everybody needs to have a little common sense. Back in the day, people had more common sense. It was okay. We're spying on each other with phones and everything else. So buy a fucking pair of binoculars and stop being a dickbag and hurting people, and think about what you're doing and do your homework before you go roll up and ruin someone's life.